This is the one now.
All right.
We're going to leave this bit in.
All right. This one we have to leave in. I'm not allowing you to press the stop button.
We had a few false starts. Hello and welcome to What's Our Seat Number with me, Johnny Gross.
But you've said "and" like 2 times consecutively,
exactly,
and then this time, last time I cut you across you. That was my fault. But like now, you have there's an expectation for you to say it now.
But you thought you were going to say "and."
No, I didn't. I stayed quiet. You screwed this one up.
Well, I screwed this one up. Okay,
Start again. I'll tell you what. Let's plan this now in the podcast instead of doing it before, like we should have done. Right. Mm-hmm. In the intro, right, you're going to say, "Welcome to What's Our Seat Number with me, Johnny Gross," and I will say, "and Simon Gross," or do you want to say "with me, Johnny Gross," and let me say "and me, Simon Gross"? What do you prefer? What do you think sounds better?
I think you should say the "and." I think it was a mistake.
So yeah. I'm glad it takes a big man to know when he's wrong.
Exactly.
And
unfortunately,
you're huge.
Unfortunately, Barbara Broccoli, Michael G. Wilson, and Kerry Fukunaga will not admit that they've made a mistake.
Oh my God, shots fucking fired. We haven't even done the intro.
Okay then. All right.
Right.
Then.
Start the intro on 3. 1, 2, 3. What's our seat number?
Hello and welcome to What's Our Seat Number with me, Johnny Gross.
And me, Simon Gross.
Well, I'm glad we got through that. Today we are going to be talking about No Time to Die. This is a bumper Bond special.
I feel like it should be stated right off the bat, if you haven't seen the movie, spoilers abound. This is going to be very spoiler heavy for all of the Daniel Craig movies. If you haven't seen them, first of all, where have you been? And secondly, look away if you haven't seen No Time to Die. Or if you like spoilers, keep listening.
Who does that?
You did it to yourself with the gun barrel.
With the gun barrel. I did it with the gun barrel because I didn't want to...
No, don't lie, because you can't help yourself.
Because I can't help myself, but also the Craig gun barrels have been a mixed bag, and I didn't want to be thinking about the gun barrel into the opening sequence.
But then when you watched the gun barrel, you looked over at me, and you were thinking about it. You made a face at me, so you were obviously
well, no, because I
was
trying to gauge what you thought of the gun barrel.
I thought it was shit.
So there we go, shots fired, quite literally, as we go into the first subject of the day, which is
Wait. Before we go into the gun barrel.
Yes.
Can you explain, because I feel like there needs to be a frame of reference, what is your relationship to this franchise?
My relationship to this series, our mother has told me... What?
Nothing, go on.
We are brothers, in case you didn't listen to the last episode. The only other episode, actually, because it's taken us another 2.5 months to get here.
It's fine.
So our mother has told me that she took me to see The Living Daylights. Must have been around 1987 or 88. Mm-hmm. So I would have been 5 or 6.
Living Daylights.
Yeah, I remember because I remember seeing Live and Let Die on TV, and then subsequently a bunch of other Bond movies, and I remember flashbacks that it wasn't Roger Moore or Sean Connery.
Right.
So I must have remembered it somehow.
Right.
So that would be the start of it. I'm not sure if that made an impression on me or not, but yeah, I Live and Let Die was definitely a lot of indelible images there, and my dad was a huge Bond fan. Our dad, he had all the books, and I used to sneak down and unlock the cabinet and check out the covers, even though I wasn't allowed to.
So what would you say was your reaction when you saw Timothy Dalton for the first time in the cinema, Living Daylights? The gun barrel comes up. Do you remember any of that? Do you remember nothing?
Not at all. I remember...
Couldn't have made that much of an impression, though.
Well, that's the thing. I think it was like subliminal, but I remember seeing The Living Daylights after I'd already seen a bunch of the other Bond movies, when it premiered on LWT, and it was followed by Dame Edna's Neighborhood Watch. And that's a very strong memory there.
Wow.
I remember seeing it and being enraptured because it wasn't Sean Connery or Roger Moore, and because it was kind of new, and it's like the John Barry score has a little bit of electronics to it, a little bit of a beat, which I thought was cool. And he was very spry and athletic, which was interesting. And that was when I was a kid, and when I grew up a little bit, it was more because he had the seriousness, he had the pathos, and he actually felt it when when his colleague gets blown up in the cafe.
Yeah.
And his reaction is just that reaction of anger,
ferocity, and he bursts the balloon with his hands, and he
which is a big departure, really, because Sean Connery and Roger Moore didn't really emote as much.
Well, I mean, if you count moving an eyebrow up.
Well, that's the thing, actually. Roger Moore would be the first to admit that most of the acting he did was with his eyebrow.
Yeah.
But he had the personality, he had the charisma, and he was fun, but he was not in any way, shape, or form the Fleming Bond. He actually said that he found it hilarious that Bond used to walk into a place and introduce himself. He's a spy. He works in secret. And, he used to say, "My name is Bond, James Bond," and and everybody would be like, Mr. Bond, welcome back. How was your...
So it's really interesting that you say that, because I don't want to just talk about, all the other Bond movies and stuff, because it's very tempting.
Right.
But, that moment in Casino Royale where he walks into the hotel and he's been told what his cover name is. The whole car ride over, he's being told, your name is Mr. Beach and I'm Mrs. Beach or whatever. And then he goes, my name's James Bond. You'll see the reservation under Beach. Right. It's a recklessness. It's not like, hello, my name is Bond. He's showing off for her, and sort of showing her he doesn't care about all that stuff. He just wants to get the job done. He's very no nonsense, and I think it's like showing off. Right. Anyway, pointlessness.
One more thing though, because this will actually tie into No Time to Die Another Day, is that that's why I reject outright the codename theory. Aside from the fact that it's brought forth, if anybody doesn't know, the codename theory was brought up by, I think, a casual fan on Reddit. I don't know exactly who or how to trace it all the way back. It's like the John Travolta meme. It's one of those things
down the rabbit hole we go.
Right, it just gets lost in the ether. But yeah, the codename theory is that every time an actor changes, it's a new character that the James Bond name is passed down to as a codename.
That it's a moniker.
Right, and I find that ridiculous for several reasons. First of all, because the filmmakers didn't intend that in any way, shape, or form. It was much simpler than that. They needed to change actor, and they just brought the same actor in with a new actor in with the same cast and the same MI6 sets and everything, and just continued on as if nothing had happened.
Yeah.
But there are also character attributes and traits and things like that that always serve as like a through line. Obviously, references to Tracy and On a Majesty's Secret Service and things like that. And aside from that, he always, in a lot of the previous Bond movies, he has a fake name that he uses when he wants to get into the villain's party. Yeah, James St. John Smythe. Why would he have to do that if James Bond is a code name? And why would he need the number 007 if James Bond is a code name? 007 is the code.
Yeah.
And it just, the fact that in the Craig reboot, which is, a lot of people... who were talking about this on social media started with the Craig reboot. That's where they grew up, and I was already a spry 21-year-old or something
when that came out.
23-year-old when that came out. So yeah, I mean, I find that hilarious that there's an actual reference, to the fact that he's gonna dispense with his cover name, and that Vesper's pissed off with him about it. But that is the joke. That was what Roger Moore was going on about. Is that you can't take this guy seriously if he's if he's going to go around being a spy and telling everyone his name. But anyway, I digress.
To just finish off the conversation about context. For me, I have always lived James Bond through you, right? Because
that's why it feels crowded in here.
See, I made a joke in one of the rejected openings where I said, "Johnny, I'm wet," and he looked at me like I'm disgusting, and then he says shit like that.
Yes, but
because what I just said was not an unheard of phrase. It just, you didn't need to make that dirty. But now this whole podcast's been derailed. Now, or what are you gonna do? You go press stop now?
No,
get away from it.
I want to just bring up the that Mitchell and Webb look sketch, okay? Because. Would you like to grasp my rod is innuendo. Would you like to wank off my cock is not. Mine was in the great
Brilliant.
tradition of Roger Moore. Yours was in the great tradition of Austin Powers.
Right, yeah, sure. Yeah. Another great Mitchell and Webb sketch, which is Bond related, is where Mitchell is Blofeld, long-haired blonde character, the villain,
Right.
And he says they're like doing a gambling thing, and it's mostly, instead of playing cards, it's guessing the weight of a cake. Right. And it's like, they're saying to the Bond character, you're the best guesser of the weights of cake in the business, right? And then they do this whole thing, and it's an absolute tie. And he says to him, so, Mr. Suave, would you like to play a game of Whack the Rat? And Mr. Suave goes, do you mean wanking? Brilliant. Okay, right, so...
I have to apologize to any of our listeners who think we're immature. We are.
Don't even apologize, because I think it's quite clear from the opening that we couldn't get right, and we left it in probably at this point. You know, it's bad. Okay, so listen. Context-wise, I've always lived vicariously through you, but you basically said to me, this is amazing, and you will like this too. And I was like, oh, I do like this. And I became obsessed.
Do you remember?
I don't remember. It was very early. Because you had the Bond posters on your wall in your bedroom.
Right.
And we used to play on the Sega Master System console in your bedroom.
Right.
And I used to stare at Pierce Brosnan, and, you know, he'd stare back at me. You had the Tomorrow Never Dies poster.
I had the little postcards.
You had the postcards, but
Yeah.
on the wall you had the Tomorrow Never Dies poster.
Right.
Not GoldenEye, I don't think. I think you did as well. Like, it was all Pierce Brosnan on that wall, I think.
Yeah.
It was the one underneath the TV.
Well, because at the time, I don't think we had Amazon, and, you know, obviously I was a kid, so I wasn't making money, so I don't think it was as easy to get a hold of, you know, things that weren't as current.
Yeah.
You know, so at the time it was all Pierce Brosnan, and I just wanted as much merchandise as I could.
Of course you did.
I remember I went to Central London and I bought a replica P99.
No, I was going to talk about that. So,
okay.
One of the forbidden things in our house growing up was that we're not allowed toy guns.
Yeah.
And Johnny was the rebel, and he just had a drawer that was Guntopia. It was like all the guns, and it was like ones that you could, you know, cock, and ones that you could, you know, they had like a fake hammer that you could pull back. You had like a cap gun. You had all sorts.
Yeah.
And he brings home the P99.
Yeah.
And
so it was plastic,
but it was heavy.
It was heavy, and
it had
thick,
the
and it had
007 like insignia on it, and it was like, and you could pull out. I think you could pull out the base or something. Or no, you could open the top.
Yeah, because it was a cap gun.
Because it was a cap gun.
Yeah.
And I used to sneak into your bedroom when you weren't there, and I used to play with the guns and pretend I was James Bond. And I bet, if you're being honest with me, you used to do the same thing as well.
Well, Daniel Craig does it in Layer Cake.
In Layer Cake as well. Well, this one's
that gave
really
me validation.
No, but like, here's the thing: is that I used to sneak in there and pretend I was James Bond, but also you used to just. I'm trying to paint a picture for people to understand just how much you and I live and breathe.
I drew a gun barrel on a piece of paper.
Yeah.
And I cut out the middle. And
put it on the camera.
And had the blood coming down as well. Like, I cut out the wavy bits of the blood or whatever, and we put it in front of the camera, out of the stills camera. And we used to take pictures of us walking.
I remember that.
Yeah.
I remember also when I was a kid, I asked you to draw a gun barrel for me.
Right.
And you did.
I was shit at it.
No, you drew the gun barrel. But this is it, that I'm a kid and I'm going, can you draw me a gun barrel?
Right.
Right? And then you little shit. So there's a movie called The Page Master, and I was very scared of Mr. Hyde in that. And you went, oh, and look who's in the middle of the gun barrel, and I'm thinking he's drawing James Bond, and he's drawn like a face of Mr. Hyde, and he goes, it's Mr. Hyde, and he like shoves it in my face. None of this is important. You should just understand that we lived and breathed this as kids.
Right.
And you had the guns. You used to put ketchup on your lip, and we'd like do and like punch each other, and you were doing Timothy Dalton from License to Kill, where he has like the blood dripping down his chin in that fight in the bar, and you know, like we fake punching. You'd have like fake punching matches with me and with your friends and stuff. All sorts.
I'm surprised we didn't get hurt more, to be honest.
We did.
We did.
We used to have Zorro fights with swords and stuff, and you used to smack me on the hand, and then there'd be a crying thing, and I'd go.
And then, like 10 minutes later, we'd be
back
doing
at
it again.
So,
which I'm seeing with my own son. Actually, it happens quite a lot.
Yeah,
screaming, like the world is ending, and then 10 minutes later he's back at it again.
So I think that kind of describes the obsession. But you've had them on VHS.
I remember I used to do VCR to VCR, and I copied GoldenEye onto a second VHS tape, editing out all the violence because you were little at the time.
Because you wanted me to experience them,
Yeah.
but he would do his little editing things where he'd like start and stop it and start and stop it.
I had like an obsession with the BBFC because I thought it was like a badge of honor to watch a 15 or an 18,
Right.
or to own it on VHS and have the big red logo on it. And I thought to myself, like, how would the BBFC rate this PG?
Right.
So I cut out all the shit that I thought was like, you know,
And it wasn't just James Bond. You used to do this with a lot of movies for me. I think it. I don't know. I'm not speaking for you, but I think it came from a need to share it with someone.
Of course,
right?
of course.
Not just because you were corrupting me or something like that. And
not just.
Not just. And I love James Bond, and I was also fascinated to learn that it was a book series as well. Because you told me about that as well, and I was like, oh, we have them in the
and a comic
house.
strip series as well in the Daily Express.
Yeah. Which you have, don't you? You have like a book of it?
Two of the omnibuses, yeah.
Right.
Omnipi?
I don't know.
Omnibi? Omniboo?
Omniboo sounds good. And you got, so you, let's talk about what you own. You owned all of them on VHS.
I can go through this.
And they all had the similar spines.
Okay,
right?
wait. There was more before that. There was the. So I had I had them recorded off VHS.
Okay.
I think I recorded License to Kill a few times before they actually showed the uncut version.
Yeah.
Because it was just cut to shit. And I remember my friend had this James Bond companion book, and it had stills of things that were not in the movie, like because ITV had cut them out of it. So I had them all on VHS recorded off TV. Then I bought. I think I won like in a competition, or I sent off for something, and I got 2.
Oh, really?
Or 3 or 4, maybe something like that. It was Dr. No, From Russia with Love, Goldfinger, Thunderball, and I think Octopussy.
Why would they bundle that?
It was a bit random. It was a bit random. There were there were 4 or 5 of them, and then I conned my mum into buying me the rest of them.
Soda.
Serves you right.
Fuck.
I don't even think we need to explain what happened there.
It's pretty obvious.
Yeah. So I had them all on VHS. Again, I bought License to Kill several times and never got the uncut version.
I'm soaking wet. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm really uncomfortable now.
Would you like a heater? I don't think we have one.
No, I'm good.
Okay, so I had that, and then I had them. I bought like a bunch of the Brosnan ones on DVD, and then I bought the tin on the full set tin.
Yeah, I remember that.
And then there was the Ultimate Editions, which were remastered. So I bought them in like the box sets that there were. There was the Connery box set, the Roger Moore box set, and then you had to buy, and the Brosnan box set, and then you had to buy Lazenby and Dalton separately. And then I got the 50th anniversary Blu-ray set, which is one of the prides of my collection. And then the rest of them, the Skyfall, Spectre, and No Time to Die are separate. Like I already pre-ordered No Time to Die, obviously. It's out on December 31st, apparently. And even if I have major problems with it, how can I not?
Right. No. You have major problems with Octopussy as well, and with a lot of the other ones.
Actually,
So it's like,
recently,
don't say it. I don't want to hear it. Just don't finish the sentence.
Recently, I've kind of...
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
So now that we've sort of talked a little bit about
the
history and the obsession and the whatnot, now you can talk about the gun barrel.
I can't. Your pop filter is now dripping.
I know it's dripping. It's that's what I don't know if you noticed, but you were in the middle of talking about what box sets you have, and I noticed it, and I went. It's like I didn't want to clean it in case it distracted you.
Okay, so 20 minutes later, let's.
I think it's worthwhile to spend the time to talk about, just so that people understand exactly why we're having such an emotional reaction to this movie.
Right, of course.
Because the reason I wanted to do this is because I've been trying to explain it to people without spoiling for them what happens in the movie. and they just don't. They're like, why are you so upset about this?
But you won't be able to do that, and I don't think you'll be able to do that if you're talking to somebody who hasn't grown up with it as much as we have. And the other thing is that if you went to it and you absolutely 100% loved every second of it, it's fine. It's an opinion, and I'm sure that there are people who are Bond fans who consider themselves Bond fans that really enjoyed it. But listening to the Bond and Friends podcast, shout out to MI6HQ there.
They are brilliant, by the way.
They're brilliant. They're much better than we are.
No, but if this podcast sparks some kind of interest to hear other opinions, their dissection of No Time to Die is also fantastic.
Yeah, because they had a couple. They were in the minority actually. They had a couple that enjoyed every second of it.
Yeah.
But
they had their problems with it as well.
They had their problems with it as well. Yeah, but it's as if they were kind of picking thoughts out of my brain.
Yeah, mine too. I was listening to it. I was going, yes.
Yeah, and I also started watching the Calvin Dyson spoiler video that I've been waiting for ever since the movie came out, but I stopped after about 5 minutes because I didn't want it to color my, this
conversation. Yeah. So we've shouted them out. Right. What was it? Why'd you go on that?
Why did I go on that? Because people aren't going to understand why you're so upset about it.
Right. So there's a lot of things here, but can I just ask you one more question about your connection to it?
Sure.
My opinion of how you see Bond may not actually be the truth, so I want to just clear it up.
Right.
I think my opinion of what you think of the Bond movies is that you love them all, even the ones that have warts, right? You consider you need to have the whole collection. Like you won't say I don't like this one, therefore I don't want it. Right. And I've never heard you say, this is my Bond. Like, a lot of people will say, Sean Connery's my Bond because they're old. And, someone will say, Roger Moore's my Bond. And for me as well, I'm not like any one of them is my Bond. If I had to pick one, I'd say either Timothy Dalton or Daniel Craig. But, I will also, I watch all of the Bond movies with an equal love, as in just for the idea of Bond, even though some of them are shit. I will watch Man with the Golden Gun and I will be like, this is still really cool.
So that's the thing. I wouldn't say that I love each and every one of them. I definitely have my issues, and also you listen to those podcasts. You can listen to Bond fans talking about Bond movies, and they can dissect each and every frame and each and every action, and sound like they are ranting Mark Kermode style. Mm-hmm. And professing their undying hatred for this movie, and at the end of the day, they still love it because it's Bond.
Exactly. No, that's what I'm saying. My relationship is that I will sit down with you and I will watch Octopussy and I will be furious with everything that's happening in that movie, right? And or A View to a Kill. There's some really annoying stuff in there as well,
right? Absolutely.
And I will sit and we'll do that, and then I will still say I had a good time watching that movie with you, right?
So I will say that I have, I have issues with a lot of them. Issues. You Only Live Twice is almost universally adored, and to me that's where all of the sort of 70s jokiness began. It's sort of offshot off there. And Diamonds Are Forever is an issue with me, even though
Absolutely.
I used to watch it over and over again as a kid, and I know it backwards and I know it off by heart. Man with the Golden Gun. We got issues with Octopussy, even though I've kind of cooled down on it over the years, because John Glenn brought in a certain grittiness to Roger Moore that wasn't there before.
I've never noticed.
And I mean grittiness beyond what people normally talk about in terms of the Man with the Golden Gun, the way that he treats Andrea Anders and Mary Goodnight. I'm talking about a little bit more of a seriousness, kicking for Ferrara's killer over the cliff in For Your Eyes Only,
right?
And the way that he the way that he handles himself in Octopussy and A View to a Kill. Normally in the first act he's still being kind of slimy and creepy,
right?
But as the stakes get higher, he gets a little bit more serious, and I like him better when he's doing that.
Yeah,
because the jokes are not particularly funny.
I just feel like the jokes are completely out of place for me in all the movies that they're in.
Yeah,
and I know that's...
depends.
I will watch them. I cringe. I always cringe. Anyway.
But, and Die Another Day, obviously, is a big issue for me.
Oh, it's a big one for me as well.
Right.
But there are some moments in there,
using the ejector seat to flip the car over in the ice chase.
Yeah, there's stuff like that. Also, like in that moment where he grabs the drip,
yeah,
and he's like, I thought I got your attention, whatever it is. Like he's very aggressive.
And also the opening sequence is pretty good.
Also pretty cool.
I mean, albeit with a little bit of green screen there that kind of looks out of place, but
there's a lot of that in that movie.
Yeah.
But
we won't go into it.
I wanted to ask you, would it be safe to say, before talking about the gun barrel, that your expectations for No Time to Die were very high?
Oh my god. I think that every Bond film, my expectations are very high. But hold on one sec. Going back to what you said about my Bond.
Oh, sorry. You didn't even answer that.
Yeah, I didn't answer that. So
I lost interest.
Well, if you lost interest, then we're
No.
audience.
I just got distracted and giddy by the idea of talking about why I don't like No Time to Die.
Right, we'll get there in a second. But it's kind of like Doctor Who. Actually, it's not like Doctor Who, because for me, it was always a mishmash of Roger Moore and Sean Connery and Timothy Dalton. I didn't see On Her Majesty's Secret Service until a little bit later. Mm-hmm. The thing with Doctor Who was it was whoever was on TV at the time, that was your Doctor.
Yeah.
So for me, I think it was Colin Baker and then Sylvester McCoy.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw John Pertwee on reruns or whatever, but I wouldn't say John Pertwee was my Doctor. And obviously my opinions have changed, but you still remember who you first saw.
Right.
And with James Bond, it's a different situation because there were 30 years at least of history before I came into it, and there were everybody was always constantly on TV, like all of the different actors on bank holidays, so I'd see a mishmash. So I don't know, I appreciate all of them, and I think that the iconography and the formula and the music and the style and everything, and his chutzpah as well, which is a personality trait that carries over to all of them, and the way that he does these ridiculous things during action scenes, and the way that he, not just the way that he treats women, but the confidence and the cool. Yeah. There's like there's a through line there, which we'll get into now about No Time to Die. There's definitely a departure from that.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's move on. No Time to Die. My expectations were high.
Safe to say.
Yeah, and that rhymes. So, the gun barrel. So Hans Zimmer released that track a while ago, so I knew it was going to be a copy of Thomas Newman's Gun Barrel for Spectre, with the music going on over the logos and all that kind of stuff, and the actual gun barrel music being an aping of Tomorrow Never Dies, which then carried through to The World Is Not Enough, and then after that, for some reason, people composers tended to go that way. So there was that, and then Daniel Craig's walk and everything, whatever. But the thing that buggered me the most was the lack of blood. Which people are going to say,
bang, blood dribbles down.
Like
it has
Alan
to be
Partridge
that. It has
said
to be
that has to be there. So it has to be there.
It seemed to me, like there are what the fuck moments, or moments that turn something on its head, and we'll talk a little bit about that later with like how we think the story should have gone in our opinions, which we've talked about like over the last couple days, apropos the villain. But right. I kind of feel like there's a lot of stuff in this movie that changes things unnecessarily just to look different. And the fact that there's no blood, the fact that Bond kind of unfocuses out and disappears. Right. So I think defocuses.
The thing is that nobody's talking about it yet. None of the cast or the crew or whatever. They've done their publicity tours and all that kind of stuff, but the movie hasn't been released yet in North America. It's coming out on the 8th of October. I think we need to wait a little bit of time to get more candid, spoilery interviews with people like Cary Fukunaga, sorry,
The director,
and Barbara Broccoli, Michael Wilson, and
the
Daniel Craig.
producers, and the Bond actor.
Right, indeed, you don't have to do that.
I know. Just a second, just very gingerly gonna. If one wants soda and they don't want soda on themselves, they must hold it at least at arm's length. Words. Anyway,
right,
go on.
Another one of those tomorrow. So I feel like people have written that him fading away is kind of a signpost to the end, but I think that the iconography is the iconography, and also somebody on YouTube fixed it.
And it looked better.
And it looked amazing. Like, there was really no problem with like fading from the red to the white. And actually the red and the white really works well. I mean, look at the book cover of On Her Majesty's Secret Service, where you've got like drops of blood in the snow. It's a great image, and I think it would have worked much better. I like the fact that it irised out into the scene. Yeah,
that was missing for me in the previous ones.
Yeah. But look, I'm not a stickler. Okay, I think that and this has happened quite a lot in the past 5 or even 6 movies or 7 movies even, that the creators have tried to make things feel different but the same. But there's a line there.
Well, hang on a minute, because they did change it for Casino Royale.
They changed it for Casino Royale.
I thought it was so epic how they did it. Because, he picks up the gun, the guy gets up, and then he turns around in the Bond fashion of turning around to shoot someone. And then it goes into the gun barrel, and the blood dribbles down. And it goes into that Chris Cornell, amazing. Every time that flares up, even when I just put the song on my phone, I get chills, right?
Because the iconography, the red is part of it.
Exactly. There are blueprints for what make it work, and when you leave one of those out, it loses the impact of the excitement of seeing that thing. And I think that they're not stupid. It's not that they don't know that people want a gun barrel that looks like a gun barrel
at the beginning of the movie.
Right? But like, again, it says nothing about. If you have the gun barrel at the beginning of the movie and it's classic, it doesn't say anything about, so now it's one of the old Bond movies. No, that is just part of the iconography of a Bond movie.
Right. I mean, there are 2 examples really of when they changed the gun barrel for the better, which was the Brosnan era.
Yeah.
Where suddenly everything became reflective, but it was still the same.
Exactly.
The same look. And Casino Royale is a huge departure, but they managed to do that within the blueprint, and appease the fans. It's a lot of people's favorite gun barrel of the Craig era. It's my favorite stance of his, definitely.
Yeah, for sure.
And the
second one's very aggressive.
Quantum?
Yeah.
I would say that's my second favorite.
I like
it's
that
like
one too.
It's a really good one.
Blood dribbles down too quickly, and then it zooms out.
Yeah, but I think it's a good one. I despise the Skyfall one.
Yeah. Because he's bobbing his head up and down.
He's walking slowly, and it doesn't look good, and he freezes, and blah, 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 blah. And the Spectre one is okay. To me, like, I start watching Spectre, even though it's one of the weaker ones, I start watching Spectre, and I think, okay, here we go.
Right, because the gun barrel is the gun barrel.
Right, and it doesn't, like, iris out into the scene or whatever, but the main attributes of that iconography are there. And I know that a lot of people are going to be like, this podcast is going to be all nitpicking. Look at you.
Yes, it will be. Please get over it.
However, while I will say it's a 10-second sequence, and a lot of people say it's not a big deal, it does put you in the mood for a Bond movie.
Right.
And that one kind of buggered it for me.
I think something important to talk about, which is also why I wanted to bring up the context at the beginning, is that there are so many repeat viewings for me and Johnny for all of the Bond movies that it's very, very there are certain things that to us feel Bond like, and I think for everybody, but like we will be nitpicking. At the end of the day, Johnny's going to own No Time to Die, and at some point in his life, he's going to accept it as canon, and there are going to be things about it that he likes and things that he doesn't like, and same for me. But like, and also I think the reason that we're nitpicking so much is because this is fresh, and because
we love it.
You know, it's fun to talk about. It's fun to dissect these things. So, you know, if nitpicking isn't your thing, that's 100% fine. Just enjoy our dulcet tones and fall asleep. Cake. Anyway, so moving on to the pre-titles.
Right.
I really liked it.
Right. So here's the thing. I just want to disclaim. The ending of the movie colored my view of the rest of it.
Yeah.
Because at some point I stopped enjoying myself.
Because you knew what was going to happen.
I knew what was going to happen, and also because of certain things that didn't make sense, and certain things that were like ridiculous and all that kind of stuff. Ridiculous in the Bond universe. In any other movie, they probably would have been fine.
Yeah.
But I'm fairly certain that I enjoyed most of the movie.
Right.
And that's part of the reason why it's so bloody annoying. Even though it's like, you know, peppered with all these various different issues that I have with it. But, you know, so the pre-title sequence is, you know, I was doing that thing that I do when we watch a movie in the cinema that, you know, that kind of harks back to things and, you know, music cues and stuff like that I sort of look over at you and I kind of elbow you in the ribs and I get excited and I'm jumping up and down. And I
do that too.
Yeah. And the pre-title sequence had tons of that kind of stuff while at the same time dealing with that sort of bogged down history of Spectre and you know, and Vesper and etc. etc. I think what people wanted from Batman after the origin stories, like I would say that 1989's Batman is an origin story to an extent, that deals with his parents' death.
Yeah.
And then you've got Batman Begins, deals with his parents' death, and once the second or third movie comes along, the filmmakers, I remember the filmmakers, like certain, you know, like Tim Burton and Joel Schumacher and you know, and Christopher Nolan saying things like, you know what, he's done enough brooding over his parents. Let's move on from that. Let's have him be Batman for a little bit, and like let's have him come up against new obstacles and whatever. We have that in the background. We know that his entire character is colored by that experience.
Yeah, it is his main motivator.
And I feel the same way about Vesper. They wrapped it up in Quantum of Solace, and there was a nice little callback in Spectre. But did they really need for like everything to constantly keep coming back to that?
So hang on, before you jump ahead.
Yeah. Oh, you want to start with the Safin sequence?
The break-in. Yeah. It is the first time that I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, because your memory is a lot better than mine when it comes to Bond, but I don't remember the last time I watched a pre-title sequence for a Bond movie and it felt like a horror movie. Absolutely,
and a lot of people have been talking about that as well. Also, Kerry Fukunaga. Why bastard?
The director.
Like he talked about it in a couple of interviews. That, you know, that was intentional, and I think it works really well. I like it. I like it when people genre bend.
But it's also really interesting because when I was watching Spectre last week, in between doing like a million other things, so my focus was a little bit split. There's a moment where she says, a man broke into our house when I was a kid, and my dad left a gun under the sink, whatever. And then later on in the movie, you know, Blofeld says,
I visited your house
when you were a child, and she says, I don't remember that.
Okay, that came out a lot more Janusz from Ghostbusters 2 than Christoph Waltz.
A child.
Dr. Winkman.
I came to visit your house when you were a child.
Command me, Lord. So you know, it seemed to me at the time when I watched Spectre before seeing No Time to Die, like, so
that was Blofeld.
And he says, I came to visit your father when you were a child, and she goes, I don't remember that. And I'm like, but you just said on the train that a man came to your house and whatever, so it didn't sit with me, and I was like, that's weird. And then when they revealed that and I don't know if they planned it like this, you can't know from movie to movie if they planned that.
They didn't.
But that kind of does now track, because he wasn't talking about that. He could have just come to their house, you know, for a meeting coffee or something, right?
Yeah. Imagine Blofeld sitting down having a coffee coffee and a Tim Tam.
But like, they like when he says that and she says, I don't remember that. I'm like, well, I mean, she says that she shot the man, so
Oh, here we
Yeah.
go. I can expand the codename theory. Blofeld is actually an immortal Colonel Hans Lander,
Fuck's sake.
and he's talking about the opening of Inglourious Bastards, where Madeline Swan is one of the daughters on the farm. So yeah, there you go. I've just made it.
My lord! All right, so moving on to Bond in Rome. Wait, where is it?
Yeah,
It's in Rome.
yeah. I think Matera.
So moving on to there, he and Madeline Swan are happily, necking and whatnot.
Je t'aime.
Je t'aime indeed.
Yeah.
And
Something I want to mention here though is first of all, there's a nice match cut there.
What?
To her being under the a match
under
cut.
the ice and then
under the
being
water,
under
and
the
then
water.
like her head coming up in
Yeah.
like swimming and whatever. And it's a nice introduction to him as well because he's like he sort of walks up and he's kind of relaxed, and you normally see Bond in the middle of a mission at the beginning of the movie, so it's like at that point I wasn't worried. I was all right with it. We got some beeping outside.
Beep it. How dare you beep people?
Do not beep.
Wait patiently, and that person will move.
Yeah, and then they're driving in the Aston Martin, and you hear Hans Zimmer's callback to On Her Majesty's Secret Service, which is the instrumental version of We Have All the Time in the World.
Yeah.
Which I heard before, because they released it like a couple of days
Oh,
before
that was
movie.
the track that you
That
heard
was the
before?
track, and I told you, I said
Right.
to you, and I cried when I heard it as well, by the way. I'm a bit of a sap. Because it kind of segued nicely from Hans Zimmer's score into that, and I wasn't expecting it.
Oh, I see.
And it was so beautiful and so well orchestrated and whatever that I was like, you know what, I wanted you to experience that, in the cinema. So I liked that at the start, but now I'm kind
I'll
of
stop shouting.
now I'm kind no, that's me. I'm adjusting myself. I like that at the start, but now I'm kind of wondering if maybe because there were so many other callbacks to On Her Majesty's Secret Service later on that they were a little bit labored or belabored.
Do you know something? In the trailer for Spectre,
Yeah.
they have the On Her Majesty's Secret Service theme.
Yeah, but that's only because we thought there was going to be a skiing sequence in Spectre, and then
I
never
don't
was.
know. I just wish that they would have used it more because it's such a great. The remaking of that music is so it's iconic. Whatever, it's cool.
Yeah,
it's not necessary.
So no, but at the time when I was watching it, and you see them coming over overhead shot in the mountains or in the city or wherever it is. My memory's already hazy. I'm going back to see it again, hopefully tomorrow. But yeah, you see them in the Aston Martin, and he says, "We have all the time in the world."
Yeah,
And that came out George Lazenby because there's no other way for it to come out.
but yeah, that makes you go, oh, hang on,
Yeah.
right?
And then Je t'aime,
Right.
and then there's this nice
Why
little...
why do you think that was
What?
that she said it to him in French?
Because she's French.
Okay,
Even
enough.
though- even though they speak to each other in English. But
okay.
Yeah.
No, just I thought maybe you had like an idea about it, like
no idea.
maybe it's easier for him to say it if he's not saying it, in his native language because
No,
it's a
but
hard
like
thing for him to say.
he's repeating it, I think.
No,
because-
I'm saying he says it back to her,
Right.
But I'm wondering if maybe it's because he just doesn't say it in English, because maybe it's a hard thing for him to say, but it's easier for him to say it in another language. That's what
But
I was
then
thinking when I watched it.
It's possible, but then later on in the movie...
He does say it to her in English.
Yeah, but that's when, when he's about to pop his clogs, so...
Oh yeah, Bond dies at the end of this movie.
Spoiler.
I need to ask you about the Vesper connection.
One
Because-
sec, because the scene that follows is them in bed. It's the only scene, really, where you see them interacting as a couple.
Right.
Aside from the scene later on in the Norway house,
Yeah.
you don't get that so much. Like there's a scene on the train in Casino Royale with Vesper, and there's like some sparring and flirting and all that. Stephanie Broadchest, and they've got like these intense scenes together when she won't let him buy back in.
Yeah.
And then
bloody idiot.
right, and then the scene in the shower.
Yeah.
Which is very nice and tender, and you don't see that in a Bond movie.
And
very much.
and it's a shower scene with their clothes on, which is something
Right.
that's very unusual for Bond getting into the shower with a woman. Like I know that
Right.
that sounds like I'm being flippant, but that is actually something that is very. It sticks
Right,
out.
that was actually Craig's idea.
Yeah, he. Yeah. What was the story that he told in the documentary?
I don't remember.
No,
I don't think
I
so.
don't want to. I don't want to talk bullshit.
Yeah, no, but I think that the idea of him getting, I can't remember what it was before, but the idea of him getting into the shower with his clothes on was
his idea.
Yeah. Which is a very strong image, I think, and very much sort of solidifies Vesper as the one.
Yeah.
Which I felt the same way with Tracy as well, because not only was Diana Rigg a fantastic actress and lifted George Lazenby from his inexperience, but they created all these scenes of them courting each other and stroking cats in gardens and stuff. And there were scenes of them like flirting and whatnot, and with Madeline Swan, there's really none of that. They are a product of an intense situation, and a product of a very dysfunctional connection as well.
Yeah.
And so
I don't buy their relationship at all.
I don't buy their relationship either, but also because Bond and Vesper are he was 38 when he did that.
Yeah,
and she was like maybe in her early to mid 30s or something like that, and they have a look and a feeling that kind of you can believe that these two would be together.
Yeah,
whereas Madeline Swan is she's 36 and he's 52, I want to say 53.
Yeah,
53. So I feel like. And you can see that he's getting old. Like, I mean, aside from the fact that he's way more athletic than Roger Moore ever was, and you believe him as a killer, whereas Roger Moore in A View to a Kill was just like past the Zimmer frame grandpa,
Right.
And he even said that himself. He was like, I was only 100 years too old to play Bond by the time of the last movie.
It's weird that he's necking with Tracy in A View to a Kill, for sure.
Yeah. Oh, you mean like Stacy?
Who gives a fuck, Johnny, honestly.
No, but his last words as Bond were, haha, ooh.
Right.
So, and the rest can be left to imagination. I'm also not sure when Q became a pervert, but
So I don't buy the relationship, you don't either.
No.
And so I also find it very...
like, why is Madeline Swan the one to make him kill himself? Because there's a daughter?
Well, no, I think that it's more about the fact that she's the mother of his child. I think that does make the stakes higher.
That's even worse, because if none of that happened and they just ended up like coming back together after 5 years, they got a kid. Imagine that the Norway house sequence where he sleeps over is a bog standard drama,
right?
At some point they would probably end up filing for divorce and battling for custody over their kid, because I don't believe that they have a strong relationship.
I find their relationship to be the kind of surface level that you find in a lot of movies where there's a token female, love interest,
which is what pisses me off so much about this thing, because it all pivots on that relationship. Like, let's not beat around the bush. The whole Safin thing and the nanobots and all that kind of stuff is like secondary to his central relationship with Madeline Swan.
Yeah.
I feel like if that doesn't work, then the ending of the movie doesn't work. Then the rest of it doesn't work.
I can't quite put my finger on.
And also, that's what I wanted to say.
I think it boils down to Spectre, right?
It does boil down to Spectre, because Sam Mendes was throwing up his arms at at some point and going, I don't know what I want to do here.
Right. Again, like, if they were going to do interconnected movies, and this has been said by other people, but we think the same thing. If it was going to be interconnected movies, they should have planned it from the beginning,
get-go.
Right?
And another suitor for the princess. The whole Rise of Skywalker thing comes back to rear its ugly head. I can buy the lack of continuity in the X-Men universe, because they kind of like start new stories. They don't really carry over so many plot threads from movie to movie, which is also why I can buy the lack of continuity in the Bond series from Sean Connery to Pierce Brosnan.
Right.
So I feel like I feel like the latest Star Wars trilogy and, you know, the 5 Craig movies have that same issue, which is that they didn't plan it out. Or also Zack Snyder's, DC universe.
It's just been very, very, very messy because
Right.
the first 2 movies, Casino Royale and Quantum, were... Quantum of Solace was a direct follow-up and connected to the first one, and it was him reacting to what happened in that movie.
Right.
And then...
Skyfall was more or less a new adventure.
It was a new adventure where he had moved on from it. Silver is connected to M, right?
Yeah.
Which is the only thing that we... And then that was retconned in Spectre to have Silver be, fact, part of Spectre. And so it really felt like none of this was planned. And also, there's other problems with Skyfall and Spectre in that they then started introducing
that's my biggest problem with it is like, you know, Franz Oberhauser, MD, New York Times best-selling author of all Bond's pain.
It's just very, it's like they had these 2 that are connected, then this one that isn't connected, and then they very desperately tried to connect everything up again.
Right.
And then this movie tries to show, look, it really is connected, but it doesn't ever really take any strides to make that happen. They could have done some very clever retconning if they would have gone with our approach to... I don't want to talk about that yet, but like what we think would have been at the end. But let's move on because we are still talking about the pre-title sequence.
Right.
We jumped off from
but I just want to say that Skyfall had the ability somehow to do something new and fresh and exciting without breaking out of that standalone story formula so much. So, you know, a lot of people talking about this is the only thing they could have done. It's really not.
There's so many ways that they could have taken this.
Okay, so
is the Vesper connection necessary? You've already answered that question, I feel. I thought it was a fantastic moment that set off a fantastic chase sequence.
Right.
Where he goes up to her grave and there's like the tradition... What was it? It was that they were burning their sins or something? Or they were burning
their secrets.
Their secrets.
Yeah.
And he writes on a piece of paper, which I didn't expect him to write, because it's an interesting look into how he views that whole story. Because up until now, he's been blaming Vesper for, you know, what she did, and he can't forgive her, and, you know, all of that. And then, you know, he's written "forgive me" on the piece of paper, which is like, I should have done more, right? Like, you know, I should have known something was wrong. Like, that's what it says to me. I should have known something was up. I could have protected you. Things could have been different if I would have made you feel like you could talk to me about it. You know, there's a lot of different things going on there. I felt that was very deep. And then suddenly...
I think that goes into his inexperience in Casino Royale as well, as you mentioned. Yeah.
And the headstone explodes and chucks him backwards, and there is our first action moment, but also our first disappointment in the movie is the look on his face after he's been thrown.
And there's a lot of that
and there's
throughout
just
the movie.
A lot of this, and it's a big complaint for both me and Johnny. We came out of the movie and we were like, why does he seem so inept? Like, I know that he's just been thrown off by an explosion, and he can look hurt, and he can look angry, but he's got this kind of old man, doddering old fool kind of look on his face, like, oh, what's going on here, right? Which
I
is
just took a spill down the stairs.
Right, it's very... And he does it as well when he, in the car chase, like, there's a sequence in the trailer which was so cool, where he very sternly is looking at the oncoming car. Yeah. And he makes a decision and leaps off the side of the bridge, grabs the cable, rope, and goes down with it. And then the next bit of that is he whacks into a wall, which in any of the previous movies, he'd angrily shake it off and go, like that, you know? And he whacks into the wall and lands on the floor, and he's got this, you know, like, you know, oh my goodness, I just hit the wall look on his face. And it's just a disservice to his characterization of the character. Like, I know that he's older, but he needs to have some cool. He needs to have some anger.
Yeah, there's a little bit more of an emphasis on comedy, I think. Yeah, and reaction, etc., etc. And Bond isn't so much about reaction; he's more about action.
But his reactions are usually fueled by cold, stern, anger. calculation. It's like there's that scene on the bridge where he's making the decision to jump off.
Yeah,
is his Bond, like that view of his face
the
where
Bond
his
that he's
eyes are very
established.
cold.
Yeah.
The blue of his eyes is really sticking out in the lighting. The way that his face is very set.
Determination.
And stony, yeah. And so then to offset that with that doddering look when he lands is it feels like a disservice to me.
The issue that I had was the distinct change in direction in terms of his characterization.
Yeah.
Because the four movies. It's not like there's been a development of that. There are 4 movies where he is a certain way. That's also in keeping with Bond. As the more serious side of Bond. The more Fleming side of Bond, which everybody says all the time and kind of beats it over the head, but it's true though. Like he's more of a fallible human being.
Yeah, like if you haven't read the books,
feels it.
His characterization in Casino Royale and even License to Kill and parts of The Living Daylights and also parts of GoldenEye as well are very much adaptations of the book. This is actually something that I was
closer
saying
to the book.
I think
not like a carbon copy.
No, I wasn't saying that, but like there's a. I'm trying to remember. I don't remember if I was saying this to Shosh or to my friend who came over last night.
Shosh being your wife.
Yes, my wife. If you've listened to the first episode, you'd know that. But I was saying that there's a difference between copying the books and adapting and keeping it the same and to understanding what makes that character compelling and his core, his essence, and translating that to the new thing that you want to do.
Which is what they did with the plot of Casino Royale as well.
Exactly.
Sort of transposing it to the current, to the present day and the current situation politically.
Because a lot of the things that happen in the book are very much in that time,
right?
And the way that they're like describing like smoke dense casinos and like sitting in a cafe and a bomb goes off in a car, and his reaction to that is not as exciting as rolling between 2 trucks trying to stop a plane being blown up, right? But they managed to keep the essence of how Bond reacts and speaks and behaves and conducts himself in the books. And I think that you can say what you like about how he behaves in the book is very misogynistic, and he that's not the message that should be sent out nowadays, and I agree with that. But there are certain things that I feel that Daniel Craig did that showed his understanding of the essence of Bond in the books that he completely disregarded in No Time to Die. Right. Almost completely. There are still some really cool moments.
Well, we're coming up to one.
Yeah.
So they speed away in the Aston Martin, right? Mm-hmm. And he's yelling at her and he's pissed off with her and he's how could you betray me, etc., etc., etc. It turns out obviously that she didn't betray him, but
it was made to look that way.
Yeah, that was Blofeld's endgame. He wanted to drive a wedge between them and separate them and make Bond as miserable as possible, but which is going back to the whole.
I feel that if Bond was Bond, he would have seen that. He would have seen
not
through
necessarily
it. Like,
because it's Vesper.
Yeah, I guess it's a trigger for him. He has trust issues. Okay, no, I buy it. I do buy that.
Right.
I do buy it. I'm just
saying. So,
Dubai.
we've bashed it over the head that we can't stand all the retconning and the callbacks to Vesper and all that kind of stuff. But very effective right at the beginning of the movie.
I think that her particular use there, like the callback to her inspector, was pointless.
The callback to her inspector was a Easter egg, I think.
I don't even think it was that. I think it was so like he's still thinking about her that seeing a tape,
but there was no intention going back to the idea of not planning out your trilogy or whatever it is, that there was no intention in Spectre to to do what they did at the beginning of No Time to Die, probably because the script was only written 3 months before they shot or whatever it was. With Danny Boyle exiting and then Purvis and Wade coming in and then Phoebe Waller-Bridge doing a polish and Kerry Fukunaga doing a polish and etc. etc. It is a nice moment. He's standing in front of the grave. You've got the Hans Zimmer calls back David Arnold's Vesper theme, which I
which was
loved.
Brilliant.
But anyway, so let's move on. We've got the moment in the car where you got Primo, the cycloptic villain.
Yeah.
My cycloptic colleague here.
So Primo is the cycloptic villain, and he's shooting at the bulletproof window.
And you're 100% sure that you know what's going to happen there.
Yeah, it's that I believe is also like very much a callback to On Her Majesty's Secret Service, and he is callously sitting there, with that expression on his face of like,
I'm gonna let you die because you betrayed me.
Exactly,
and
then
she's
pleading
like
with him,
screaming at him.
So good.
It was really effective.
Yeah,
it was really, really effective. And up until this point, apart from those like little looks that he gave, where I felt like he was a bit doddering, right? I was like, this is set to be a Bond movie. Like, it felt like, because he's, like, sitting in the car, he's ignoring her, he's just looking straight on, stony-faced. Like, if they break through the windows and they kill both of us, it serves you right. Like, that's what he's like,
Right.
And then she kind of breaks through to him, and he goes,
okay.
Right? And then the machine gun's coming out of the car.
Well,
no.
So this is the issue that I have, is that, okay, I say this is the issue as if it's the only one.
This is the only issue.
This is my only problem with it. So the constant like Easter egging and calling back to previous Bond movies, etc., it's getting old. It was getting old when they did it in Die Another Day. Well. No, all the way back to Die Another Day. Why is he smelling Rosa Klemp's shoe? Fuck off.
Oh my god.
I think that
the jetpack.
Casino Royale did it a little bit more subtly, I guess, because also they wanted to give him certain pieces of iconography so that you don't feel like you're not watching a Bond movie. Honestly, there's very, very few moments of Bond theme throughout that movie, but it still feels so Bond. It feels more Bond to me than Skyfall, to be honest. And the thing with the Aston Martin and all that kind of stuff, they brought back the Aston Martin, but they show his taste in cars. So it's not like they're, Easter egging, you into oblivion. Whereas, and the tuxedo is his costume. They call back to
the ejector seat, like in Skyfall.
In Skyfall, yeah. I'm saying the ejector seat in Skyfall, and the fact that the Bond theme plays where, when the lights go on, you see the Aston Martin for the first time. It's not necessary. It's really not necessary. You can have a Bond movie be a Bond movie without going, hey. We know that there's been, 20 films before Daniel Craig started.
But this is part of the problem. This is where it starts getting muddled, because they are trying to say that this is a completely new Bond and whatever. Right. And it feels like they just backpedaled. Like, they were doing so well. They did, because I'm one of the people who really likes Quantum of Solace, and you are as well. Yeah. I'm aware of some some of it, but I still think that it is a wonderful follow-up to Casino Royale.
It's a spy thriller.
And it's his characterization throughout is fantastic. He has wonderful character moments all the way through, from looking away from the guy so that he doesn't have to look at him once he's killed him. Like the guy's bleeding out on the back. Yeah, he's bleeding on the balcony.
No,
he's looks away.
He's nicked his femoral artery, and he's holding it there, and he's like looking away from him.
Exactly. And like he's all sorts of stuff, like not explaining himself when people are accusing him of
that's the thing. That's what I found difficult to grasp in No Time to Die, is that M says to him in Quantum of Solace, do you realize that you just killed the bodyguard of Guy Haines, who's like a high up political official or whatever it is? And he doesn't even try to justify it. He's like, he knows that he didn't do it, but he's like, you know what, M, I'm your agent. If you don't fucking trust me, then that's your problem. I'm going to carry on doing what I'm doing because I can't be stopped.
There's another element to that I think, actually, which is just kind of, when I see that scene and he doesn't say anything, it's like, I know it's been engineered to look a certain way, and I'm just not going to dignify it. I'm not going to play into this game that they're playing. Right. Like, me trying to say, no, but it wasn't me. It's like, it's exactly what they want, and I'm not playing into it.
Right.
I know what I didn't do.
You're going to get a call in a minute. Would you mind telling them I've headed for Cairo?
I'll be happy to.
We have a thing about the way that she says that. It's not actually, she doesn't actually say it like that at all, but it just gets worse and worse every time we quote it. So, and he uses the bullets in the
the
headlights,
miniguns and the headlights and everything.
and I groaned. I think
It doesn't. But look, first of all, I saw that in the trailer, and second of all, it doesn't bother me as much. I know that they keep trying to stuff the gadgets in there, and Q and Moneypenny, and etc. etc. They felt that it was important to bring back those touchstones.
But they can't keep their own promises. That's the
Right.
problem. Is that in Skyfall he says it's not exactly Christmas, and he says, "What were you expecting? An exploding pen?" We
Right.
don't really go in for that sort of thing anymore. That's a statement. We are bringing back these characters like Q and Moneypenny and M, but not the way that you remember it. And I'm like, okay. And they brought back the Aston Martin. It was like a thing, and the ejector seat, and I'm like, okay. But then they don't keep that promise. And an Inspector, and he's got like the exploding watch, and he's got like, and I'm just like, stop bringing back the gadgets. I know that everybody loves them. I know that without gadgets, it's not a Bond movie for a lot of people. But I feel that tools of a spy
Should be his
in
wits.
a non-cartoony version of the world, because they with Casino Royale established a more realistic world. You don't have machine guns and headlights and smoke screens and oil slick and it wasn't just machine guns and headlights. He had like those little spike balls that come come out of the car and it was an oil slick. He didn't have oil slick, but he might as well have fucking had. And it for me completely takes me out of it, because I remember when we went to go and see Casino Royale, we saw it twice.
Right.
And I went back to high school, and people were saying how shit it was. And I got into these screaming matches. I was like arguing the point with people that this is how Bond should be characterized in a modern world, right? And they were like, but there's no gadgets. And I'm like, fucking good! His gadgets are his wits and his guns and his fists and,
But that's the thing. That's in the day, it was a big deal to see Bond using. First of all, things got sci-fi.
Yeah, exactly.
In the 70s, and
Going
it
up
was
to space.
Yeah, also like the kinds of gadgets, the lasers, all that stuff.
Yeah.
It was a thing to see how Bond would creatively use the gadgets
to get out of certain
situations. And there was an art to that. And taking aside the point that Jason Bourne, whichever everybody compares them or whatever, Jason Bourne uses a pen and he uses a rolled up magazine and his fists and all that kind of stuff. That's not the point. The point is that they would set up these like props, and then at some point in the movie, Bond would use it creatively to get out of a situation.
Well, this is the point that I was making with Black Widow, right? Is that they had a perfect opportunity to make a spy espionage thriller, which is what they did with Captain America 2, right? Winter Soldier. And they had all of these gadgets that she's using in Captain America, but it never felt like the gadgets were the thing. It didn't feel like the gadgets were, oh, look, she's going to use a thing coming out of her wrist. And it was tools that she has with very high-tech, whatever, to keep up with these superheroes, and she uses them when she needs them, right? And it doesn't feel that way anymore with the Bond movies. It feels like they are fan service. It feels like they are ushered in for the people who like the gadgets. And I wonder what gadgets are going to be in this movie.
So that's what I'm saying, is
and
that they're plonking it in. They're plonking it in just to...
It annoys me.
So, like, I would... You know what I would like to see? If there is a need for gadgets, let's say that there is a audience need for gadgets.
Okay.
That without it, the Bond movie would just not be successful. Nobody would go to see it, and everybody would say, "Fuck Bond, there's no gadgets." Then they need to come up with gadgets that are, first of all, nowadays everything's a fucking gadget. Your phone is a gadget. It can do a million different things.
Exactly.
They need to come up with these creative ideas to create those situations where Bond, creatively uses gadgets. I'm going to say the word creative a million times because there is no creativity in just plonking previous gadgets that have been in previous Bond movies into the movie and saying, "Hey, look, it's the Aston Martin. It's got miniguns in the headlights."
Can we just for a second define what you mean by creative? Because I think that there is a line. Right? And there is a line where it crosses over to cartoony. For example, when he has the breathing apparatus in Thunderball, right? He knows that I think I don't remember because I haven't seen the movie in a long time, but this is a movie that takes place with a lot of water segments. So the fact that he has a gadget that is geared towards his mission, right? That sits firmly on the line of something that seems possible. Like, they have taken a technology that exists, the ability to breathe underwater with certain apparatus, and they've made it smaller, which is what you do with technology. As time goes on, phones get smaller, things fit into your pocket, they become wearable. So they have to take those realistic principles. And I'm not saying, because I'm sorry that I'm going to talk about the video game, but like Bloodstone. Right. And I think that Calvin Dyson also talks about this, is that the smartphone is your gadget. It does everything. It scans stuff, it opens doors, it tags enemies, it, shows you enemies through walls. And it's like he wanted more gadgets, and I'm saying it's fine that all these things are happening on the phone, right? I completely disagree with him. And so I'm like, I'm okay with it not being sci-fi objects. It feels like a gadget should service his mission. They know what his mission is, and that it's going to service that.
Well, I'll give you an example though. Take Moonraker, for example. I know you don't love Moonraker.
I love it.
No, but like, if you want to take the pinnacle of Bond, of Moore's silly Bond.
Yeah.
You've got the watch with the darts.
You mean his entire era? But go on.
Not his entire era. I mean, Fiora is only his bookended by crap, but what's in the middle of it is a spy thriller.
Yeah.
So you've got the watch with the sort of pulse activated darts.
Yeah.
And he says, like, you activate it like this, and the dart like pierces the bum of the horse in M's painting. And he says, "Oh, thank you, 007," whatever. So you've got that set up, and then when he's been told by Drax to put his hands up, and then you remember that he's got the darts in his watch, and the dart flies out and gets him in the heart. And that to me is a creative, cause and effect. A follow through of a gadget. And the fact is that aside from Q saying, it's got a very loud alarm, if you know what I mean, and then he throws the watch at Blofeld because he set the bomb to go off. It's kind of like, okay, so what? His watch has got a bomb in it. Like that to me doesn't seem creative in the same way.
Yeah.
They used to find really interesting ways to use a location. They used to find really interesting ways to use the gadgets. They used to find really interesting ways to have Bond, do these like outrageous stunts. So, that's got to be part of it. I mean, if they're going to introduce it, why don't they introduce it all the way?
Yeah.
So like just having those little callbacks. I feel the same way about that about the Book of the Dead in Tom Cruise's The Mummy. It's just like, why? Just so that the fans can go, ooh,
that was in the other one.
Yeah,
like make your own. I always get annoyed with that. I always think that
like Nolan managed to do it for 3 movies. In Batman Begins and The Dark Knight. It didn't need to call back to anything. It was its own fucking thing.
Exactly. And I think that if you're going to reboot something, or you're going to make your own movie. Statement about with the Batman now, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to see anything that came from previous Batman movies. I want to see how this Batman reacts in this version of Gotham. Anyway, the song in the movie, No Time to Die.
Okay, so we transition from Bond putting Madeline on a train.
And she holds her tummy.
She holds her tummy. Yeah, that's a she knew. And then we have the Dr. No dots.
Awesome. I love that. I was like, this is here again. I cannot quite put my finger on what is a good callback.
Right.
Like, because it was done in a way that didn't feel like it was nudge, nudge, wink, wink. Know what I mean? Say no more, say no more, say no more. Like, it was very, you know what this is, but we're doing it like this here.
Right.
And that was really cool to me.
There's quite a few callbacks to Dr. No as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you got the dots, and then there's like some porcelain stuff. I don't remember a lot of the title sequence and the credit sequence.
Yeah, me neither.
And that bothers me because I came out of both Skyfall and Spectre with very clear images
Imagery,
in my
yeah.
head.
Mm-hmm.
And also Casino Royale. Casino Royale,
Brilliant.
it's one of those movies that I would want to go back to before I saw it and see it again for the first time.
Yeah. Because you want to experience it for the first time with those shivers and the...
Yeah, incredible.
Yeah, me too.
Without knowing what's going to happen and without knowing...
But I still remember it. I still very vividly remember the feeling of this jittery excitement about that opening scene being in black and white, and the way that he dispatches both of them, and he goes, yes, considerably, and he cocks the gun, or he releases the, and I was like, this is amazing. And then when it suddenly bursts into because you and I had listened to You Know My Name, Chris Cornell's song for that movie. We'd listened to it with the guitar backing.
Yeah, there was a...
I hadn't
Chris
heard
Cornell's,
the horns version.
Right.
And when that flared up, I just remember every hair on the back of my neck standing up. I was I was gripped, and I remember being just inspired. There are some things that when you watch a movie or you play a video game, for me, where I will just feel like I want to create now because this has got me going. You know,
Right.
like it's,
That's an example of completely doing something different. You know, it still feels like Bond to
but
me.
right.
I remember thinking in the cinema, and every time I've watched the movie ever since, what that went too quickly. I want to see it again.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like I love that opening sequence. I think it's amazing. By contrast, we're talking about the shortest opening sequence of a Bond movie ever to the longest opening sequence of a Bond movie ever. It goes on for quite a while before you hear Billie Eilish's song. But anyway, back to the... I like the song.
I like the song.
I like the song. I like Zimmer's contribution to it. I think it's very Bond. And also what it says, they said that they had either gotten the script for the opening sequence or they'd seen the opening sequence, and the lyrics were tailored specifically to the emotions
and you
that
can
the characters...
feel it. There is a connection to the song and what you've just seen, which is I really like Billie Eilish's song. I think it's great. I think it felt very Bond to me. And it also felt, in a way, as a much needed. I want to think of what the word is here. Just like it needed to sound like that for the last
Right, it needed to
movie.
be melancholy.
Yeah, exactly. And the mood of it, the tone was just right. So I think they nailed it. And again, the title sequence, I don't remember it. I don't really have anything to say about it. I just remember thinking, that the song sounds really good. And
I found it interesting that as I thought about this earlier today in the shower. I didn't have to tell you that I was in the shower. I just wanted you to have an image.
Yes, you did.
So I found it interesting that Writings on the Wall becomes their love theme in Spectre.
Mm-hmm.
After the train fight, and then and then No Time to Die becomes their love theme in this movie. When they meet again in Norway.
Yeah.
And you've got those the wonderfully weaved into the score by Hans Zimmer. It works. It works very, very well. I need to see the movie again in order to try and internalize the Danny Kleinman's title sequence, because I'm fairly certain that there's some good stuff in there. He is excellent at what he does. He's done, all of them aside from Quantum of Solace since Goldeneye.
Mm-hmm.
And I love them. I think they're pieces of art, even surpassing some of Morris Binder's work.
Yeah.
So then we transition into the opening scene of the film, which to me is a bit of a... Yeah, you're nodding.
I'm
what
nodding.
was Hugh Dennis doing in there?
I'm nodding because I was so brought down.
I felt like I
by
walked
that
into like
the sketch from Mitchell and Webb.
A sketch from Mitchell and Webb. It made me think of Ricky Gervais's Show Within a Show on Extras, when the whistle blows. That was what it made me feel like. I thought that he was going to come out and be like, all that stuff.
There are some people who you cannot cast in a movie and not have people feel taken out.
But it's
by
not
it.
just Hugh Dennis. I
it's
think
the guy, the Russian guy, has also not got a very convincing.
The Russian
and
guy,
he's too
I wanted him
funny,
to shut
bumbling.
up.
Yes,
I wanted
Please
him
God,
to shut
shut the fuck
up.
up.
It was a fake Russian accent that just sounded like, almost as offensive as what's his name, as Goldie, playing Mr. Bullion.
yeah.
It's just like, I'll see you later, Mr. Bond. It's like
After
it's what we used to do in the playground. You used to put on a fake Eastern European accent to be the bad guy.
Right.
Anyway, so this guy, is a little bit too comedic for my liking. I felt like he needed to be in a different movie. His constant changing of allegiance and whatever. We're talking about the scientist Obruchev. Right?
It was extremely Austin Powersy.
But it's also due to the dialogue. I felt like Phoebe Waller-Bridge was flexing her Fleabag muscles here.
Why?
Because it sounded like sitcom dialogue. It sounded like, I've accidentally put the Ebola virus in the fridge.
Oh, you're talking about that?
Yeah, all that stuff. And then I thought that Hugh Dennis was going to turn around and go, "Do you like the music of Shawwaddy?"
Listen, I think that they spent way too long there. That could
definitely
have been done.
That could have done
in about
30
3
seconds.
minutes. Less. No, you got to give it time.
You said 3 minutes. I said 30 seconds.
I just feel that it was so unnecessarily long. And
it's already a long film.
Belaboring the point that there's another player here apart from Spectre, and
it should have been taken a little bit more seriously.
Yeah,
I feel that scene specifically.
For the ending of this movie and the themes of this movie and the gravity with which we are expected to feel what's happening in this movie, there's a lot of flippancy in it. And it's like, you have to have moments of levity, but you said this to me the other day, and I thought this was a fantastic example of what I mean by this. You said, in the Batman movies, the Christopher Nolan Batman movies, there's some very heavy subject matter all the way through. It's very serious, but the moments of levity that are in there are pitch perfect.
So this is the thing. Nolan said that he would be shit scared to make a full-on comedy.
Yeah.
And he said the reason being is because if you pepper jokes throughout a serious movie, if a joke doesn't land, you just take it out.
Yeah.
And if it does land, it's great. It provides a little bit of levity to as you say, a dark subject. For example, in Inception, you've got that little moment with Tom Hardy. You mustn't be afraid to dream a little bigger, darling. And then he pulls up this massive gun.
Yeah.
That kind of thing works for me. Alfred. Saying to Bruce, like, you can't even lift a bloody log.
My favorite Alfred thing, by the way, which made, when you said this to me, I was thinking of was not the bloody log, is where he goes, I suppose I'll be arrested as your accomplice, right?
I'm going to tell you it was
all your idea. The delivery of that dialogue between the two of them, not just that line, but that whole back and forth, is, like he says, I don't, he says, I suppose now you're going to say I told you so, and a very emotional Alfred says, today I don't want to.
But that's
and
the
then
thing.
It transitions into that, although I did bloody tell you, and it's so well delivered that Christopher Nolan should make the next Bond movie. Absolutely.
No, but I think that those kinds of things are what endears you to a relationship as an audience, and what gives it like depth. I feel that as I said before, the relationship between Bond and Madeleine Swan didn't have any of that, whereas the relationship between Bond and Felix, which we'll get to a little bit later, has that in droves. Yeah. Not just from previous movies, but established in this movie, so you really feel it when he croaks.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that was the point, was that Nolan said that, if he made a full-on comedy and the jokes didn't land, that's the entire movie, and you'd have to,
you'd have to take out the whole movie.
Yeah, exactly.
And so when you move on to this whole, this opening sequence where the virus, not really a virus, the nanobot virus thing.
Yeah.
And I love what you said the other day, Johnny. You sent me a message. You said, "Oh yes, and nanobots are nanobollocks," and I was like, "That's fucking fucking brilliant. I want that written on my tombstone. Nanobots and Nanobollocks. Loving wife, loving.
That basically sums up the whole plot, doesn't it?
It does. I was like, that was my takeaway, was nanobots and nanobollocks. If I don't believe in the threat,
Right.
I can accept nanobots in a video game. There are certain things in the Bond video games that I can accept that I can't accept in a movie because my disbelief is suspended by the fact that this is a video game. And now listen, that's not to say I do think that video games that establish themselves as being serious, like The Last of Us or something like that, I would be, very taken out of it if there was some cartoony, subplot or whatever. This is the last movie in Craig's, era.
Yeah. It's also
and
the
they've
reason
chosen
why
the stupidest fucking plot point.
Yeah, it's
ridiculous.
It's like the
threat makes
MacGuffin
no
of the
sense.
MacGuffin.
Yeah.
I think that because it's the reason for his decision to just stand there and let them bomb the shit out of him.
Yeah.
It should have been something more believable and more serious.
Yeah, and it should have been something that
I think
he believes in.
Fukunaga
Yeah.
added that to the plot. I don't think it was nanobots at the beginning.
You think it was a virus originally?
I think it was a DNA targeted virus, and that to me would have been a lot more believable. Considering the times we're living in now, I wonder if they softened it because of COVID or not. I don't know. I know because it was already done by the time, right?
I don't know.
Or were they in editing?
I don't know, because they did rewrites, didn't they? Or
They did rewrites.
reshoots.
They did reshoots for like you could tell in the scene in Norway that you have like close-ups of Bond's hand with a certain phone.
Yeah.
That maybe that's an insert. Maybe. Like things like that, because they wanted to update the technology because after a year and a half, the tech had kind of gone out of date.
Whatever.
Who cares?
No one cares, and I don't know why that was a priority to them and making the movie better wasn't.
Or adding blood into the fucking gun barrel.
So you're saying you were able to let it go?
No, I still can't let it go. I am thinking of taking that dude's iPhone filmed gun barrel fix with the blood that he's put over it and the traditional
and just
music,
put it in the movie
and just stick it in front of the movie and just let it be.
You're just gonna hold your phone up to the screen so that you can't see the actual one. Yeah. So before we move on from the that pre-bit, and we move into what pushes everything forward, I think that this would be a good time to stop part one.
Oh my god, we barely...
Right, no, but what we've done here, and I think that this is really important, is that we have laid the groundwork for people understanding, exactly what we feel Bond is and should be and all that stuff. And now I think that we're really on a roll. So part two will be mostly, just like ripping the rest of the movie to shreds, and I think that also is fitting because most of the latter half of the movie is what I have problems with anyway.
Right.
But I need to piss like a racehorse.
Okay, so let's take a pee break. For the rest of you, we'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
What's our seat number?